In this video breakdown, we're going to take a look at a defensive tactic that's been used for the last several years in Madden as far as the series goes. And a lot of guys like to use this tactic because it winds up basically slowing down the receivers on the outside, or even that, for that matter, to the inside. The name of the defensive tactic that we're going to show in this video breakdown happens to be called delayed bump and run man coverage. And for you guys who don't know how to do this will give you an opportunity to take a look at it, because we're going to take you guys step by step to show you how it works. For those of you guys who already know how to do it, something I do want you guys to pay attention towards the end of the video. You're going to see some routes that actually where this doesn't work again. So some of you guys probably already know this, but for those of you guys who don't know, there are some pass routes where delayed bump and run man coverage doesn't work against. We're going to show one of those in this video breakdown towards the end of the video. So let's go ahead and take a look at this delayed bump and run man coverage and how it works. For those of you guys who are following along, we're going to come out in the Eagles playbook as far as on defense. We're going to use this defense called 4-3 stack, and the play that we're going to come out in is the cover 3 defense. Now, I realize this is a zone defense, but for us to get the delayed bump and run man coverage to work, we have to come out in a zone defense. As far as on the offensive side of the ball, we're going to go ahead and run this play out of the single back ace. It's called inside cross, and you guys can find it in the Giants playbook. So let's go ahead and hop onto the field and take a look at this. And very first thing we want to talk about is the coverages right off the bat. And you're going to notice this is a cover 3, it's zone defense. I want you guys to go ahead and take a look at these two outside corners. You're going to notice they're lined up about 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. What we need to do is go ahead and call bump and run coverage. So we're going to go ahead and hit the Y button. If you're playing on the PlayStation 3, that's going to be the triangle button. And then you want to hit down on the D-pad or the left stick, depending on what controller you're using. And now you'll notice that these two corners are now in bump and run coverage. You can see they're lined up a little bit closer to those receivers. Now at this point, we're still in zone coverage, right? What we need to do is audible to a man defense. In this case, we're just going to use one of our quick odds, and that happens to be 2-man under. So we're going to go ahead and hit the X button. If you're playing on the PlayStation 3, that's going to be the square button. And then next we want to hit the A button. So again, if you guys are playing on the PlayStation 3, that's going to wind up being the square and then the X button to get this to happen. So keep that in mind. If done right, you're going to wind up being in 2-man under. And you're going to notice that these corners are back lined up basically where they're at before we did the bump and run coverage that we did out of cover 3. You can see that they're lined up right here. And then you got this guy lined up right here. Now, let's go ahead and snap the ball and just take a look at this here and see what I mean as far as bump and run, as far as delayed bump and run man coverage. Because normally, if they were in bump and run man coverage, they'd be lined up, for instance, let's go ahead and highlight this in this area here. They'd be lined up tighter up near these receivers right here and right here. But because this is delayed bump and run, they're lined up here and here. And so what they're going to wind up doing is delaying their bump and run. So let's go ahead and take a look at this as we run this. And you can see on the outside that they're actually going to wind up doing this. There's the bump and run right there, and then you wind up getting that. Let's just go ahead and let the sack happen there. Now I want to take a look at this from instant replay and just kind of look at this a little bit more. Now, does this mean that delayed bump and run is better than normal bump and run man coverage? Not really. I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's just that these receivers are being jammed off a little bit off the line of scrimmage a little bit later, and the fact that your opponent doesn't know that you're in bump and run man coverage. And what that means is maybe they're not prepared for it. Maybe they don't run a play that they know they could beat normal bump and run man coverage because they see you in delayed bump and run. So they're not thinking about a play that they can beat you with. They're just going to run their normal play thinking that you're running normal man coverage or perhaps zone or whatever. But by doing this, it kind of throws them off a little bit, and that's the idea of it. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit on this defender right here and just take a look at it. This happens to be the right cornerback here. And what's going to wind up happening is you can see these lined up about 5 yards. Now he comes up about 2 yards, and then he winds up jamming that receiver. So that's the difference between normal bump and run, whereas in normal bump and run, he would jam the receiver about right in this area here. But in delayed bump and run, he jams him about right there. And you can kind of see as you look at your screen, that's what we wind up getting. Now, as I said before, does this always translate to working better than normal bump and run man coverage? Not really, but it does throw your opponent off a little bit. You can see right there he actually winds up getting beaten. Now, if we go look at to this other side over here, let's go back to the other side towards the left corner and just take a look at this. So I'll go ahead and highlight him. Sorry about the zoom there. But what you can see here is he's going to wind up jamming the receiver again, about 2 to 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. He winds up jamming. There's the jam. And he's got a pretty good jam there. And then he winds up slowing him down, and finally that receiver does get off the line of scrimmage. But you can kind of see how this might throw your opponent off a little bit. So that's the way you run as far as delayed bump and run man coverage. You need to come out in the zone defense and then audible, and then come out in the zone defense, call bump and run, then audible into a man defense. It doesn't matter what man defense it is as long as you got something set either through your quick audibles or your custom audibles, depending on what you decide on doing. It'll work. So just keep that in mind as you watch this video breakdown. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video breakdown towards the end that we were going to talk about some of the routes that can actually beat this delayed bump and run man coverage. And there are several type of routes. We're going to take a look at this play out of the single back ace, and this one is called Giants Middle. And we're going to go ahead and hop on the screen here and take a look at this. So we're going to come out in our zone defense that we did earlier to cover 3. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and call our bump and run. And then we're going to go ahead and audible into the 2-man under defense. And you can kind of see when we do this, it's going to reset the play here. It's going to call bump and run again. All right, now we should be back into it now. And you can kind of see that we're back into it. Kind of messed up on that end there. But you can kind of see that we're in delayed bump and run man coverage again, right? Now, as you look at your screen here, let's go ahead and go to the offensive side of the ball. And you can kind of see that what we're going to look at this route here on the outside towards the left. You're going to know that this receiver right now, what he's running is an inside. He's taking an inside release, and he winds up running a post route. So he winds up breaking into this area here, running this post route. You can see clearly that he's running an inside, taking an inside release, and then he winds up breaking up the field and winds up going to the post. Routes with inside releases such as this one winds up beating bump and run man coverage. And let's go ahead and take a look at it, what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and look at it here and you'll see it. See how it gets off the line of scrimmage without being jammed. Now I'm not going to say every single route works, but there are a lot of routes in here where you get those inside releases that you can wind up getting it. For instance, when I just mentioned that earlier, let's go ahead and take a look at this right here from the instant replay and then take a look at this. And again, you can kind of see from this view, this guy takes an inside release, he breaks up in this area here, and he breaks up the field and he winds up going towards the post. You remember, right, we're in delayed bump and run man coverage. You can see that he doesn't get jammed. He winds up getting off the line of scrimmage. The corner's not in position to jam him. And then he winds up running his post route. We wind up making the throw and completing it for a nice gain. However, if we go back and rewind it and work our way back towards the right side, if you looked at that route earlier that we had on our screen, this route actually happens to be another one of those inside release type routes. This is a dig route where this receiver takes an inside release into this area here, breaks up the field, and he winds up coming in this area here. Well, this time you watch, he does get jammed. So there's a little bit of difference right there. You can kind of see that he does get jammed, even though he gets off it pretty quick where he could make that throw. But you can kind of see that with that one, he doesn't actually get, the receiver actually doesn't get, the receiver actually does get jammed with that route, even though it's an inside release. So that's something that you might want to take a look at when you're breaking these down as far as doing this stuff that I'm showing here. You want to take a look at some of the routes that can actually beat delayed bump and run man coverage. If you're on the offensive side and your opponent's been doing that a lot, say you're playing a friend of yours and he's been doing a lot of delayed bump and run man coverage, you might want to go ahead and take a look at some of these pass routes and see which ones actually beat it. On the other hand, you guys who are playing against opponents on offense and you're seeing your opponent has these routes, and you're going to have to do some adjustments on defense. You may not want to run delayed bump and run. Say your opponent likes to run that post route that I just showed with the inside release, then you may want to go ahead and run bump and run man coverage, normal bump and run man coverage. That way he gets jammed at the line of scrimmage. So keep that in mind as you're doing these type of things that I'm showing as far as this defensive tactic goes. It has its trade-offs, it has its advantages, it also has its disadvantages, so keep that in mind. So again, this is delayed bump and run man coverage. I hope this helps you guys out who are looking to go ahead and use this type of defensive tactic to try to improve your defense.